Hi, my name is Daria Mezenseva and welcome to Politeka World News Show. Let's start. Politeka World is an Ukrainian news and talk show about the war in Ukraine focused on a deep analysis of the military invasion of Russia in Ukraine and its global economic effects on the international order of forces. Coming up. In today's show, we will talk with the experts about the following: Ukraine advances on the front. Around 40% of energy infrastructure has been damaged. How successful were repair works? Ukrenergo energy operator limits electrical power supply. Rolling blackouts becomes even normal for everyday life of Ukraine. How could Ukraine minimize further possible ravages from Russian drones and missile attacks? How influential could be the aid from EBRD for 30 million euros? Let's start from the development on the military front and the land damage caused by Russia in Ukraine. While the offensive in the southern direction intensifies, our military forces try to enhance counter-offensive on Ukrainian defenders continue step by step to protrude from the Lugansk region. Criminals have been suspended due to bad weather. The occupiers are trying to storm the Ukrainian forces near Bakhmut, Soledar and Rivka, and so far without success. Russian troops are preparing for street battles in Kherson as they are strengthening defenses and fortifications. Meanwhile, Ukraine has defeated up its forces in the northern region near Belarus to counter any possible renewed Russian attack across the border. Nevertheless, over the past 3 weeks, Moscow has increased its attacks on key civilian energy infrastructure across Ukraine. Officials said about 40% of the country's electric power system has been severely broken down. In total, 120 people perished in the shutdown. Russian air attacks caused the damage for $1 billion since October 10th. For example, the tech company claimed for 17.6 billion of hryvnia damage for the thermal power system during the week. Rolling blackouts becomes even normal for everyday life. The government urged citizens that they could be without energy supply for days and even for weeks in winter. Also, it's known that the thermal power plants are mostly in the focus of Russian terrorists. The reason is that this energy power helps balance the whole energy system and is the most important for its functioning. So, about the situation in energy sector, we will talk with energy expert Oleksandr Parashiy. Oleksandr, I am really happy to have you here.
Good evening.
Good evening. And how do you estimate the risks for winter season for Ukraine? We know that now we cut off the export, and we plan to import energy from different countries. So, what would you tell about the real situation in energy field?
The situation is not very good. It is controllable right now, but there are a lot of risks. First of all, related to ability of energy system to provide enough capacity for all the consumers of electricity. For example, today the capacity load of consumers ranges from roughly 8 gigawatt in the night hours to 13 gigawatt in the evening when the consumption is peaking, and even such a relatively small capacity change from 8 to 13 gigawatts, it demands some limits of consumption. It demands some rolling blackouts to keep the entire system safe. And further in winter, when temperature gets lower, we will have a much higher load than at today's peak levels. We will have like 13 to 20 gigawatts. And there is a big risk that even the level of 13 gigawatts will be impossible to keep throughout the entire Ukraine, meaning that all the time in winter when there will be some frost, some of Ukrainian consumers will be switched off, and just to limit consumption of electric capacity. So the key problem right now is electric capacity, which is insufficient in Ukraine because of problems with electricity grids. It is very hard to estimate, evaluate the efficiency of work of Ukrenergo specialists, because this situation is really extraordinary. I believe that no energy system in the world ever had such tough situation that Ukraine is facing right now. It's really like a historical level of aggression against energy infrastructure, and we can treat our Ukrenergo guys as real heroes, as much heroes as Ukrainian soldiers and at the front line, because Ukraine and Ukrainian energy system and no other energy system never faced such a challenge.
Yeah, we know.
This is why, unfortunately, we cannot even predict what will happen tomorrow or in 1 month. We can only understand that with the current level of damages, we will face some problems with electricity supply today, and once it becomes more like snowy, frosty, we will have some more problems. So if today on average we have like 4 hours of electricity cuts, in winter times probably we will have 8 or 10 hours. Unless we are able to get some supply of spare parts for energy equipment, which we lack at the moment.
Yeah, that's true. And we know that the funding of Ukrenergo has been slashed, as I know. So, and now EBRD should help Ukrenergo for 30 million euro. Will it help to defend the system, do you think? Because the problem is also the money, because we need to purchase some equipment for advance if it would be damaged by Russian terrorists and so on, so on, so on.
Luckily, we have some stock of spare parts from like the previous years, but as we can see, this stock is being depleted very fast, and the key problem that we will face, even if Ukrenergo has enough funding from lenders like EBRD, I am sure that the state budget will help Ukrenergo if there will be a need for that. But the key problem is that energy equipment is not available as in supermarkets. Energy equipment is usually unique. Each transformer, each switch gear is unique, and it takes a long time to produce each unit. Therefore, our government, our energy authorities, our energy companies are calling right now their peers in Europe, everywhere in the world, to ask them supplying everything they have at the moment, every spare part that can be supplied to Ukraine. That might be helpful. Another thing that can be helpful is calls to producers of energy equipment, because usually they have very tough order book for a year or two, and if you want to order some new equipment, you will have to go to this waiting line and wait 1 or 2 years even to supply the order. And right now, I think that many producers of energy equipment will understand the Ukrainian situation and will try to put Ukrainian companies at the head of this waiting line, and they will hopefully supply the needed equipment as soon as possible. But that doesn't mean that we will be able to purchase all the needed parts tomorrow or in a week. It can take a couple of months to rebuild our energy grid, energy system, even if money is available, even if producers are ready to take our orders right now.
Yeah, and
but another good thing is that our energy system, our grid system, was built in
Soviet Union.
And they actually have some reserve capacities. For example, each consumer has usually 2 connection lines. So if one line gets damaged, there is almost in every case there is some reserve line which can be used, and this is very good.
So, and we know that Russian terrorists usually like to destroy the electric power system. What we could tell for now, what is the percentage of the damaged power? Do you know the figures?
I think that this is secret information, so nobody knows for sure what percentage of our power system is damaged. But what we can see from like official releases is that every single power generation station of capacity more than, let's say, 50 megawatts has been attacked in this war already. Some of them have been damaged severely, but vast majority of them wasn't damaged, and this is very good. But again, we do not have some bottleneck in power generating capacity, because we have enough power generating capacity. For example, in this winter, we could expect some demand for electricity, for electric capacity at about up to 20 gigawatts. But our producers can produce roughly, so if we even do not take into account those who are on the occupied territories, and those who are on the front line, because there are a lot of them. So the producers who are in the safe zone, they can provide us power capacity of roughly 30 gigawatts. So we have some reserve in power generating capacity. But unfortunately, we have a bottleneck in power transmission capacity. And the key risk is that so we can theoretically protect our power generation units, power generating stations, because like the biggest power stations, so we have roughly 25 big power stations, and theoretically we can organize some anti-missile protection at each of it. But we unfortunately have a very stretched system of power transmission lines, and it is impossible to protect these lines. So these lines are, and what we see actually, these lines are primary targets for Russian aggressor.
So, but we know that now we receive more air defense from, for example, Germany. We receive Iris-T air defense, and from USA we just waiting for 8 packet for 50 billions, and also we received some other air defense from this country. How would you estimate this aid from international partners? Maybe they could be like more edible. I could tell that we receive this help by regulation, but not by necessity. And a lot of experts urge about it. So maybe we should be more persistent and strategic in our cooperation with the partners.
Yes, I totally agree. Unfortunately, we are at the very start of supplying of the needed systems that could protect our skies. At the moment, we know for sure only about one unit of Iris-T defense system. We are waiting for some supplies of just couple of systems from the US, and some other maybe 2 or 3 defense systems from the European Union. And again, this is not enough. We can put a couple of the systems to protect our biggest cities. But if we are talking about our energy system, again, we have at least 25 power generating units throughout Ukraine that we need to protect.
Mm-hmm. But Alexander, we know that Russia urged about bombing, yes, the energy infrastructure for advance, yes. So why we didn't receive this aid, this air defenses of different types, just far in advance? Why we are talking about it right now?
Maybe you are right. We should have been more persistent many months ago. I think that so as far as I understand, our energy ministry and people who are working in energy systems, they were aware of this risk. This risk was obvious, taking into account the behavior of Russian aggressor. But as far as I can see, our partners, for some reason, they were not sure that Russia would be that aggressive against Ukrainian peaceful infrastructure.
Okay, so now they're sure. Why they are just not in a hurry to help Ukraine? Because Ukraine defend not only just the country of our own, our own countries. They defend the country of another countries. I mean,
Okay.
European countries, and also the USA. Okay, to be really objective here. So, what do you think? What were the missteps in this cooperation with, for example, USA? Why they react so on? Because of the elections, or there are some other political reasons, or it's like the game, international global game? I don't understand really.
They do react, and unfortunately, air defense systems are also very high-tech units. And unfortunately, there are no spare units at the warehouses of producers. But of course, there are many of them working in to protect the United States, the European Union, the NATO countries, but nobody wants to demolish their air defense units and protect their territory from possible aggression of, for example, Russia, and supply these units to Ukraine. So nobody wants to sacrifice its security for the sake of saving Ukraine. Therefore, the only thing we can count on for sure is that all the Western producers of air defense equipment are heavily working to supply the equipment for Ukraine.
Okay, and there is another thing. So some energy expert told me that every electric power has its own air defense system, or others tell like there are some regional air defense system between different electric powers. So could you tell something about it? Is it real that we have such air defense systems? Are they really supportive?
As we can see, they are not much helpful because almost all the power stations that we have in Ukraine have been under attacks. No defense system can provide 100% efficiency, unfortunately. Therefore, yes, there are military districts which have their air defense units, and they are more or less located in the vicinity of important infrastructure objects. But that doesn't mean that every single power station has its anti-air unit. I think, unfortunately, this is too costly. This used to be too costly for us to keep such systems. Of course, today it would be great to have such. But we need, our army needs air defense systems at the front line, and unfortunately such systems are, so we have no spare systems to protect all the energy infrastructure objects, unfortunately.
Yes, and one more thing, just to remember that Japan was the first country who came up with help to Ukraine in the energy sector. So they're ready to help to restore some damaged energy systems, plants, so on. How would you estimate this future cooperation with Japan?
Well, Japan is among few countries in the world, like Ukraine, which suffered from a heavy nuclear disaster. And of course, they do understand the mood of Ukrainians in the situation where there are blackouts, because they also have some issues with energy supplies after issues on their nuclear power plants. Moreover, as far as I understand, Japan is located in risky area of like earthquakes, tsunamis, and so on, and they have some reserves, some spare parts, which they were able to supply to us very quickly. Other countries and power producers of other countries, they do not have such large warehouses with spare parts. Maybe this is the reason.
So we should be focused on this cooperation, but don't you think that it could be about like appropriation of energy sector of Ukraine? Because as I know, there are many countries who would like to enter after the wartime, for example, Ukrainian energy market and get some energy powers in their own.
No, I don't think so. I think it's too early to expect any businesses who are ready to enter Ukrainian markets, because like the war is not the best time for any business to think about investments in Ukraine. This is even not a good time for investment for Ukrainian businesses. We see that actually investments had stopped completely. But yes, I think that after we win, we would have some investment flow, and including from Japan, because we know that Japan is a market where interest rates are usually very low, where returns on investments are very low, and Ukraine could potentially offer great returns for Japanese investors, at least much bigger returns that they can see in Japan.
Great. Also, DTEK asked for government help, and company claimed for 17.6 billion of heavy damage to their thermal power system during the week. So it's just for 1 day, such figures of damages. What could be the assistance from the government for this company? We know that the partnership between the government and the tech is a little bit, was, I think, a little bit difficult before the war. We remember it.
Indeed, we were observing some conflict, like personal conflict between the key shareholder of DTEK and the Ukrainian president. It was exactly one year ago, but today it's definitely no time for such conflicts. We see that all the companies of DTEK Energy, they are doing very hard job to keep our energy system afloat. And as far as I understand, there are no conflicts right now. What the tech is demanding is some increase in electricity prices, because we see that energy prices for coal, prices for natural gas are very high in Europe, and electricity prices in Ukraine, they are much smaller than electricity prices in Europe. And what the DTEK is expecting from the government is that the government will allow to remove price caps on electricity, which we have right now, and that would allow the DTEK to get like 50% higher electricity price for their producers, for their coal-fired power plants.
Yeah. Also, we know that the export of the electricity to the European countries was cut off, and now we even thinking about the import of electricity. How will it influence the financing of the energy sector in our country, first of all? Because we lost, we remember $150 million per month. That's a big sum.
This is not a big amount, because currently we have trade deficit of roughly $2 billion. So 150 million is not the amount that could solve our problems. Of course, as I said, we usually had excess electric capacity in Ukraine, and that allowed us to export electricity. In March of 2022, our energy system was synchronized with the European energy system, and that significantly expanded our ability to export electricity to Europe. And our government indeed had some plan to generate some export revenue from electricity sector this season. But unfortunately, due to the recent attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, our excess capacity has turned into actually deficit, and we are facing a possible need to import electricity from Europe. And this is a big challenge, because as we see, electricity prices in Europe are much higher than in Ukraine. So if we start importing electricity from Europe, and we definitely will have to pay market price, we'll have to raise electricity rates for industrial consumers.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, this is not what Ukrainians want to do. So, in the best case, we would prefer not to import electricity, because we'll have, as you mentioned, we'll have some issues with negative trade balance, because we'll have to, we will stop earning money and we will start spending. And the problem is that we will start spending a lot because of huge electricity bills right now in Europe.
that you join us today. Thank you for this really great speech about the energy sector.
Oh, thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Yeah. Have a good evening. Bye. So I would like to mention that today we had a talk with energy expert Oleksandr Parashiy, and I was happy to be with you, and see you in the next show.